Hi guys, this is Mark. In this video, I will walk you through the process of setting up, installing, and configuring Backendless Pro in the Amazon Web Services environment. By the time you go through the installation instructions by following this video, you will have a complete installation of Backendless Pro running in your Amazon account. The installation process is rather straightforward. There are a few things that you need to be aware of when it comes to configuring some details in Amazon, and I will make sure to point those out. But you don't need to be very technical with servers and all the stuff that is entailed in there. It's actually quite simple. We simplified the process quite a bit. In overall, the installation process will consist of the following steps. Number one, we will configure a certificate, which will be important later on once we get to the point of configuring domains. The reason it is step number one is because it will take a little time for the actual validation. So it makes sense to start that process, let it run, let Amazon configure the certificate and do all that stuff while we work on the actual installation of Backendless Pro. So step number one is configuring a certificate. Then once we start it up, we will switch to EC2 system in Amazon, and we will configure our instance. And that's going to be the computer, the virtual machine, where the entire Backendless stack will be running. It's going to be done in a way where once the machine starts up, Backendless installer and manager that is called Backendless Pro will already be there. So we will switch to it to complete the actual installation and run Backendless. Once it is installed, we will verify that Backendless Console opens up and we can use the API. And once that is done, then we will proceed to the final step, which will be configuring load balancers. And load balancers is an essential piece that is responsible for routing the traffic for the domains that you configure to the actual Backendless Pro installation. So the domains that I'm talking about are going to be your custom domain that will be responsible for opening up Backendless Console and for the API endpoints. Will it work without the domains? Yes, it will, but it will use the IP address that Amazon assigns and some custom ports. So in essence, it actually makes sense to have those domains configured, certificates allocated, and then bring the load balancers into the picture. So the entire process will look like this. EC2 instance will be started. It will host the Backendless Pro technology stack with a bunch of processes that make up the actual product. Then we will allocate the domains and configure load balancers where requests for those domains go into the load balancer, and then load balancers route the traffic to Backendless Pro. So now let's switch to the Amazon console and start working on this. So you will need to set up your Amazon account and you would need to log in to the AWS console because the majority of work will be performed in there. So here, this is my Amazon console account, and the very first thing that we will do is switch to the certificate manager. So if in the search bar, if you just start typing certificate manager, this is going to be the very first thing that is found under services. It may be different than yours because I use it quite a lot, so perhaps Amazon puts it up higher, but just if you type in certificate space manager, this is the service that you would need to navigate to. Click on certificate manager, and here the very first thing that you will see with this orange button is the request a certificate button. Click the button, and the default one is to request a public certificate. Click next. The fully qualified name is going to be the actual domain name for which the certificate is generated. I will be allocating a certificate for two domains. One is going to be the domain for Backendless Console, and the other is going to be a domain for the API. So here I'm going to type in console.backendless.biz, and backendless.biz is my domain. Of course, you will have yours. Here, backendless.biz, I use it just for the demonstration purposes. And then another name in the certificate will be api.backendless.biz. Whether you call yours console dot whatever and API dot whatever doesn't matter. You can come up with any name that would be meaningful to you for your system. And then I guess the nomenclature of having it called console dot whatever and API dot whatever is makes it easier to distinguish the two. The validation method that I will use is going to be DNS validation, which is the simplest, and it is indeed recommended by Amazon. The key algorithm, I will go with the one that is the default, and then click request. So what's going to happen now is this certificate is going to be created, and then it's going to be pending validation. So if you click on the certificate ID, this screen will give you enough details where you can actually proceed with the certificate validation step. And in order to do this, you would need to have access to the DNS manager for your domain. Whether you bought this domain from GoDaddy or Google Domains or really any registrar, you will have access to the DNS configuration. So here, the domain that I use, backendless.biz, is actually managed in DigitalOcean. It doesn't have to be in DigitalOcean. Again, you will have the DNS settings for whatever the system that you use where you purchased your domain. So what I will do is I will switch to DigitalOcean, and in here, this is my domain. This is the DNS setup for this domain. So I click on it, and I will need to create two CNAME records. So right here, the CNAME, this interface provides a way to create the CNAME records. The way this will work is if you notice that for each domain, console.backendless.biz and api.backendless.biz, Amazon certificate, AWS certificate manager gives me this CNAME name and CNAME value. So these are the values that I need to copy and paste into the DNS manager to create that CNAME record. So here I'm going to copy this, go to DigitalOcean, and then paste it into here. Now, it may work a little different in your DNS configuration, but pay attention to what the final host name is. You will notice that here it repeats backendless.biz.backendless.biz. You want to avoid this. So go to the very end and remove this backendless.biz at the very end so that the final domain has just console.backendless.biz with all that other stuff in there. Now, I'm going to repeat this process for the actual value, copy, and then paste it right here. And then you do not need to clean up the actual value. I'm going to assign a lower TTL, click create record. This one is created. And now repeat this process for the other domain, which is API. So again, copy CNAME name and paste it right here. Again, let's do this cleanup at the very end, and now copy the value, paste into here, TTL, click create record. So now both records have been created, and at this point what's going to happen is Amazon will be running the validation of this domain, actually domains, because it is console dot and API dot, and when we come back to this later, we will have the certificate that is ready to use and it's going to be validated. But for now, let's switch to EC2 and proceed with the installation of our instance. To start the installation, you would just need to click the Launch Instance button. Make sure that you selected whatever region that would make sense for your application. I'm installing in Northern California because this is just a demo. In your case, select the hosting zone that is going to be the closest to where the majority of the users of your applications are going to be. And there are plenty of hosting zones that are provided by Amazon. So now click Launch Instance and then select this option and assign a name to that instance. So I'm going to call it Backendless Pro Installation. This is needed only so you can differentiate your instance from others. And if it is going to be the only one, no problem, still give it a name. Then in the application and OS images, select Ubuntu. The default version is going to be okay. And then in the instance type, you need to select the one that will give you 4 CPUs. So here it is T2.x large. The options here may be different depending on the hosting zone that you use, but pick the one that gives you at least 4 virtual CPUs, because this is a requirement of Backendless Pro. It needs to have at least 4 CPUs. Select that instance type. Next, you will need to select the key pair name. I already created mine. This one is needed in case if you need to log into the actual instance to run some commands. The entire process of installing and running Backendless will not require you to do this. However, configuring it is going to be important because for some reasons you may need to do it. And as a result, the key name pair is required. If you don't have one, click this link and configure your key name pair. Next, the network settings, we will have to modify it later on in order to enable us to get to the actual ports that are where Backendless Pro is going to be running console and API, but we will do it a little later. So for now, you can just keep all the defaults right here. Next, in the configuring storage, we want to enter 20 gigabits. Once again, this is a requirement of Backendless Pro. Finally, the most important step is going to be in the advanced details. Make sure to expand advanced details, scroll to the very bottom, and in this user data text area, you would need to paste a command, and I will tell you what that command is. To get this command, you would need to go to github.com/backendless, locate the Pro Manager project right here, Pro Manager, click on doc, and then select this AWS EC2 basic file. In here, under the installation section, the very first command that you see right here, click the copy icon. This gets copied, and you would need to paste this command right into here. So what this will do is when the instance starts up, it will add Backendless Pro Manager into that instance so we can proceed with the actual installation. Now, once this is in place, click Launch Instance, and now that instance is going to be allocated and configured, and Amazon will do all those things to get that instance running. Click on Instances, and as you can see, this one, this is the one that I just created. The instance state is pending, and once it starts up, we will see in the status check that all the checks have been validated, and now it is ready to be used. So while this is going on, let's go and check the status of our certificate. So go back to Certificate Manager, and this one is still pending validation. So we will come back to it to see whether it is ready or not. So now in instances, this one is running, the status check is initializing. While it is doing it, let's open up some ports so we can actually proceed to the next step. And for this, click the instance ID. So in the security, click the link for the security groups. So this link opens up, and in here we can configure inbound rules. What are inbound rules? Essentially, it is an instruction to Amazon to say that specific ports can be accessed from outside of Amazon, specifically from my computer. I want to get access to a specific port. So in here, I'm going to click Edit Inbound Rules, and then in here it's going to be Custom TCP port 5050, and the source can be anywhere. So this, it will give me access to port 5050, which is where Backendless Pro Manager will run. Click Save Rules. So this one is applied. And we will be coming back to this for 2 more things, which is Backendless Console port and Backendless API port. And that will be needed just to validate that Backendless is running. Click on Instances, and as you can see, it is still initializing. So let's give it a few more minutes to complete that initialization. Okay, so now you see the status check shows that two of 2 checks passed, which means that we can proceed to the next step. And for this, when you click on the instance ID, you'll be able to get the public IP address of that instance. So copy it by clicking on this icon, open up another browser window, and then go to that IP address, port 5050, just like I did right here. Press enter. And this will open up Backendless Pro Manager. And Backendless Pro Manager is responsible for installing and getting Backendless up and running. Here you can select the most recent version, and it's going to be selected for you by default. The local mounting path can remain the same, and you will need to get Backendless license key. You can obtain one just by clicking this link and filling out a form, and then a trial license key will be emailed to you. So take it from the email and paste it right into here. And then after that, also assign the login to access Pro Manager. So give it a username and some password that you can remember, because later on when you go to Backendless Pro Manager, it will ask you for the login so you can log into Pro Manager and manage your Backendless installation. But for now, I'm going to get my license key and we will proceed to the actual Backendless installation. So now I have my license key. I will paste it into here and click Begin Installation. So at this point, Backendless Pro Manager starts installing the entire Backendless stack, and you will see the various log messages from that process displayed into here. Some of the messages may repeat because there are multiple processes running on that instance in Amazon that we have started, and then one may be waiting on another to complete. Therefore, if you see them repeating just like I see it here on the screen, that is okay. We're waiting for one message that will say that all services have been installed. So let's give it a little bit of time, and once it's there, we will proceed. So when you see the message that says all services are created, that means that Backendless installation is complete, and you can click the Manage Backendless button. And this is the interface of the Pro Manager. In here, you will see a bunch of different services that make up the entire Backendless stack. And what we're waiting on is for them to turn green, that will say running. And that will also take just a minute or two. Okay, so now everything is green and it's running, which means Backendless is up and running. Before we can access Backendless Console, which by default is available on the same machine, same IP address, port 32400, and the API uses the port 32300, we will need to open up these ports so we can get to Backendless Console and the API to validate that everything is working. Later on, you'll be able to close those ports because we will be creating separate domains to access console and API. But for now, let's open up these ports and make sure that Backendless is there. So in order to open up these ports, we need to go to our instance. So here, this is our running instance. And again, click on security and then click the link for the security groups. So here, just like we added the port 5050, we will need to edit inbound rules and add an additional rule for port 32400, accessible from anywhere. And that's going to be console. And then add another rule for port 32300, accessible from anywhere, and that is going to be API. So these ports right here, I got them from Pro Manager. As you can see right here at the top, it says 32400 and 32300. These ports are going to be the same for all installations, but you might want to take a note just to write them down, as you will need to specify them right here on the inbound security rules. Click Save Rules. The security group has been updated. And at this point, when you go back to the Pro Manager, clicking on this link will open up Backendless Console. So in here, you need to create your first account. I will do so for me. Click Register. And then we are in our console. I will create my first application. And this is Backendless app running in my installation of Backendless Pro. So just to validate that everything is working, just a minimal sanity check, I will create a database table called person. And in that table, I will create a column called name, and then a couple of records, for instance, Joe. And in REST console, let's run a request. So now we see that Backendless is responding. The database is there. We can create tables. We can make the API calls. So at this point, the console and API and everything is working. However, to access console, we use the IP address of our instance and then this custom port. So at this point, let's fix this and assign custom domain name. So in order to do this, let's switch back to EC2. By the way, let's check the status of our certificate. So certificate manager, and it's still pending validation. Sometimes it is pretty quick. Sometimes it takes a while. By the way, console.backendless.biz has been validated. So now this one is still being validated. Let's give it a little bit more time, and I'm sure it will go through soon. So until it is happening, there are a couple of other things that we can do. So for this, let's go back to EC2. And in order to prepare our system for installing load balancers, before we actually go to load balancers, which are available right here under load balancing, we need to configure target groups. And let me show you what target groups are and how they work. So in here, click on target groups, click create target group. It's going to be instances. Target group name is going to be console, port 32400. Select the virtual private cloud that contains the instances, and then click next. And this is the available instance that we have, and we need to include that instance into the target group. Click include as pending below, and then click create target group. So now this target group has been created, and then the second target group is going to be for the API. So let's create the second one. Again, instances, target group name API, port 32300, select VPC, and click next. Again, select that instance and include as pending below, and then click create target group. So at this point, there are two target groups. A target group is sort of like a logical unit that says, I'm listening on specific port, and any traffic that comes to me to that target group will be sent to a specific instance to the port that is specified. So it's sort of like an intermediate element. But once you have target groups, you can actually configure load balancer, because load balancer will say, okay, well, I'm a load balancer. I'm going to be listening for traffic that is coming over a specific domain and sending traffic to a specific target group. So having target groups is a must. Before we can proceed to load balancer, let's again make sure that our certificate is ready. So again, let's go to certificate manager. And this one is still pending validation. The console is good, but the API is still pending validation. So let's give it some more time and wait till this one completely goes through. Okay, now that certificate has been issued, we can proceed to the next step, which will be creating the load balancers. For this, let's switch to the EC2 section, and in here navigate to the load balancing section, the load balancers menu. Click here and let's start creating our first load balancer. So I click the create load balancer button, and then here we will select application load balancer. Click create, and let's give it a name. So this load balancer is going to be for console. Internet facing IPv4, we need to select the VPC, which is going to be the same for instance and target groups, and here for the load balancer. The mappings, you need to select all of these. They will automatically show up. And then for the security group, the default one is good enough. We'll just stick with it. So for the listeners and routing, what you want to do is to select HTTPS, and then we need to select the target group. So now that the two targets group have been pre-created, we did it just a little earlier. So select console, since this load balancer is going to be for console. Then you also need to select certificate. So this is the certificate that has been issued, selected right here from ACM. And then I believe that's going to be it. So click Create Load Balancer. So now the load balancer is being created. Right here, here's the console. And let's repeat the same thing for the API load balancer. Again, click Create Load Balancer, select Application. This will be the API load balancer. Again, select VPC, the mappings. Security group is default, and again changed it to HTTPS. Target group will be API, and also configure the certificate. And then click Create Load Balancer. So now that we have two load balancers, let me take a look at both of them. So there are two load balancers, and then the final step will be to assign a mapping, again, in DNS between our host name and the URL, the actual domain name allocated to the load balancer. What we did previously in DNS was a step to validate that indeed that we own that domain, and the step for entering CNAME name and CNAME value, as I did right here in DigitalOcean. This was basically the validation step. But there's going to be one more step for each of these load balancers to configure the actual domain name mapping. So whenever someone enters console.backendless.biz, in my case, I want that request to be routed to my console load balancer. So for this, I'm going to click console. And notice that in here, DNS name, this value, it says a record, which is a little bit confusing. This will actually be a CNAME value. So click copy, and then go to your DNS configurations, and we will create a CNAME for console. And I already have console.backendless.biz. DigitalOcean automatically completes this, and the mapping will be to that value that I just copied from the load balancer. Click Create Record, and then repeat the same thing for the API load balancer. So here's API. Again, copy this value, and it's going to be API.backendless.biz with this value that I just copied. I'm going to lower my TTL. So now that these are in place, what's going to happen is whenever someone types and uses this console.backendless.biz, that will be mapped to that alias of my load balancer. And at this point, it is pretty much complete. There is one additional thing that needs to be done, is under security. Let's actually do it for console first. So for console, under security, click on that security group. And notice that there is actually a mapping for the incoming HTTP requests, but the source is restricted. We want to open it up for everyone. So click Edit Inbound Rules, and create an additional rule for HTTPS right here, and say it's anywhere. So we want any traffic coming from anywhere on the internet hitting port 443 to be accessible. Click Save Rules, and then repeat the same. We actually may not need to repeat the same. Let's double check for API. So here's API, security. Here's our security group. Yes, and this security group is actually shared by both load balancers. So anyone accessing port 443, which is the standard port for HTTPS, that port is going to be allowed. So at this point, we should be able to enter console.backendless.biz and see Backendless Console. It may not work right away because it will take some time for the DNS changes to propagate. But let's give it a try and see if that works. So here's my browser, and I'm going to go to console.backendless.biz. And this actually works. So now I'm going to log in with the account that I created in Backendless. And I can access console. Okay. So, and as you can see, the console is now accessible without any custom ports, just with my domain. And the same thing should work for the API. So for instance, if I go to data and REST console and I make this request right now, Backendless is configured with this private, public IP address and this custom port. So what we will do is we'll take this value, put it in the browser, and substitute this with api.backendless.biz. Put it HTTPS here. And as you can see, this works. So at this point, both custom domains are working. So what we will need to do is actually go into Backendless configuration in Pro Manager and configure these domains inside of Pro Manager. And for this, I will go into my Pro Manager, which is right here. And then under, and by the way, it's still accessible via IP address and port 5050. We haven't closed that access. So if you go to configuration and then domains and then general, console URL is now going to be https console.backendless.biz. And then for API, it will be api.backendless.biz, port 443, protocol HTTPS. Click Save and Restart. And then if we go to server status, we will see that this will start, this will going to be restarting. And once everything is restarted, we will access Backendless through our console, and we'll just make sure that internally it uses our custom domain for API calls. So let's give it a second until everything is restarted. Now everything has been restarted, and I'm going to go to console.backendless.biz, log in. And then now that we go to data, select our table, go to REST console, and then in show full URL, now we do not have any custom ports, and it is api.backendless.biz. So click get. So now the entire installation of Backendless is running in Amazon and is accessible with our domain names that we configured for both console and API. At this point, now that everything is working, you can actually go and close down those custom ports that you have configured the instance with. So if we go to instances, select the instance, go to security, and then navigate to the security groups, and then edit inbound rules. So as you can see right now, port 32300 is accessible by anyone. 32400 is also accessible by anyone. So let's delete those rules and then recreate them with a special configuration. And that's going to look like this. So 32400, and then the custom source, and that source is going to be our default security group, and that default security group is the one that is used by load balancers. So let's also add 32300 and also restrict it to the default security group, and this is the group that is used by load balancer again. So click Save Rules, and at this point the custom ports are not accessible from the outside. They are visible within that virtual private network that is created here, and load balancer can still communicate with Backendless Pro. That's it. It's a little bit involved process, but as you can see, just by following these directions, you can get to the point where everything is operational and up and running. That completes the instructions for installing and configuring Backendless Pro in the Amazon environment. If you have any questions, please use our support forum, support.backendless.com. We'll be more than happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you for watching this video, and as always, happy coding with Backendless.